Red Bull is bringing even more upgrades to Silverstone, and that should be terrifying news for the rest of the grid. But Max Verstappen has already found a problem so big. It could turn Red Bull's upgrade package into a warning sign. Silverstone is not a normal racetrack. It is not flat or weak cars. It exposes them. The fast corners, the long energy demand, the brutal tire load, the pressure of every high-speed direction change. This is where hidden problems stop being hidden. And that is exactly why Verstappen's warning matters. After Austria, Red Bull looked like it had found something. More performance, more hope, maybe even a path back toward control. But Silverstone asks a much darker question. What happens if the upgrades make the car faster, but not easier to trust? Because Verstappen has already raised the alarm about Silverstone exposing Formula One's battery problem again. And that detail changes everything. A car can have new aerodynamic parts. It can gain speed through corners. It can look improved on paper. But if the energy is not there at the right moment, if the balance still feels unstable, if Verstappen has to fight the car instead of attacking with it, then Red Bull's biggest upgrade may not be enough. And the strangest clue is what happened before the real weekend even began. Verstappen reportedly started laughing while driving Silverstone on Red Bull's simulator. That sounds harmless. It is not, because when a driver like Verstappen laughs at a problem, it usually means the car is showing him something so awkward, so unexpected, or so difficult to control that the danger is already obvious before anyone else sees it. So now Silverstone becomes a perfect trap. Red Bull arrives with more upgrades. Verstappen arrives with a warning. And somewhere between the new parts, the battery concern, and that strange simulator reaction, there's one question Red Bull cannot avoid. Have they actually fixed the problem, or have they just made it faster? Subscribe to the channel. To understand why this matters, you have to look at what Silverstone really does to a Formula One car. Some tracks let a team hide. Silverstone does not. At a slower circuit, a difficult car can sometimes be protected. The driver can brake a little later. Rotate the car carefully. Use traction out of the corners and find lap time in small, controlled moments. But Silverstone is different. Silverstone asks the car to stay alive while the driver is carrying enormous speed, corner after corner, with almost no time to reset. That is why Red Bull's upgrades are not just another technical update. They are being thrown into one of the harshest exams on the calendar. And this is where Verstappen becomes the key. Because Max does not need a perfect car in the normal sense. He has built an entire reputation on taking difficult machinery and making it look sharper than it really is. But even Verstappen has one non-negotiable demand. The car has to give him trust. Without trust, speed becomes a trap. Think of it like running down a staircase. When one step might move underneath your foot, you can still be brave. You can still be fast. But part of your brain is no longer thinking about attacking. It is thinking about survival. That is what Silverstone can do to a nervous car. And once that doubt enters a cockpit, everything changes. The driver turns into the corner slightly more carefully. The throttle comes in a fraction later. The tires begin to work harder because the car is not flowing naturally. The battery deployment feels more important because every lost meter on exit becomes harder to recover. And suddenly what looked like a small weakness becomes a chain reaction. This is the first hidden danger for Red Bull. Their upgrades may add performance, but Silverstone will ask whether that performance is usable. That word matters. Usable. A car can have speed in the data. It can show promise in simulation. It can produce a better number in a control run. But when the driver reaches the fastest parts of Silverstone, numbers are not enough. He needs the car to speak clearly through his hands, through the pedals, through every tiny movement underneath him. If the front of the car bites, but the rear feels nervous, the driver cannot fully commit. If the rear is stable, but the front refuses to turn, he has to wait. If the car uses its energy too aggressively early in the lap, it can feel exposed later. And if all of those things start connecting, the upgrade stops feeling like a solution and starts feeling like a compromise. That is why Austria may have been both encouraging and dangerous. After Austria, there was a sense that Red Bull had found something. Verstappen's charge gave the upgrade story a pulse. It suggested the car had more life, more response, maybe more potential than it had shown before. But here is the uncomfortable part. A strong Verstappen drive can hide a weak Red Bull better than almost anything else in Formula One. When he attacks, it can look like the car is improving. When he recovers, it can look like the package is working. When he drags performance out of a difficult weekend, the result can make the problem seem smaller than it really is. But Silverstone does not care about appearances. It will not ask whether Verstappen can rescue the car for one lap. It will ask whether the car can stand with him for an entire run. That is a completely different question. Because at Silverstone, confidence has to repeat. It has to survive the fuel load, the wind, the tire wear, the changing track, and the pressure from rivals who know that Red Bull cannot afford another uncertain weekend. And this is why the battery warning matters so early in the story. At first, it sounds separate from the upgrades. One issue is aerodynamic. The other sounds electrical. But on track, those problems meet each other. If the car is not stable enough through high-speed corners, Verstappen may lose momentum. If he loses momentum, he may need more energy to recover on the straights. If the energy is not available exactly when he needs it, he becomes vulnerable. And if he becomes vulnerable at Silverstone, Red Bull's whole race can change. Not later, immediately. A car that cannot attack freely becomes easier to defend against. A car that cannot deploy energy cleanly becomes harder to position. A car that forces Verstappen to manage instead of hunt gives rivals a chance they normally do not get. That is why this is not just about Red Bull bringing more parts. It is about whether those parts solve the right problem. Because the worst outcome for Red Bull is not simply being slow. The worst outcome is being almost fast. Almost fast is dangerous because it keeps the team believing the answer is close. It creates hope. It creates pressure. It creates the feeling that one more change, one more setup tweak, one more adjustment might unlock everything. But Silverstone can be brutal to almost fast cars. It takes their weakness and stretches it across the lap. A small balance issue becomes a confidence issue. A small energy concern becomes a racing issue. A small tire problem becomes a strategy issue. And before the team can fully explain what happened, the weekend has already started slipping away. That is the shadow hanging over Red Bull before the car even reaches the track. The upgrades may bring speed. Verstappen may find lap time. The headlines may focus on new parts and possible gains. But underneath all of it sits the question that matters most. When Max turns into Silverstone's fastest corners, will the car finally feel like a weapon again? Or will it feel like another problem wearing fresh upgrades? The first real conflict begins before Silverstone even gives Red Bull a racing lap. Because when a team brings upgrades, everyone focuses on the visible parts. The floor edges, the side pod details, the small shapes around the car. The pieces that suggest engineers have found more airflow, more grip, more lap time. But Verstappen's biggest warning is not about what people can see from the outside. It is about what the car may feel like when Silverstone starts asking for everything at once. And that is where the battery issue becomes dangerous. On paper, it sounds simple. A Formula One car stores electrical energy, then uses it to give the driver extra power when it matters. It helps the car accelerate. It helps on the straights. It helps when a driver is attacking or defending. But at Silverstone, the demand is different. The lap is not just a series of slow corners and straight lines. It is a long, fast rhythm. The car spends energy. The tires take punishment. The driver carries speed through corners where lifting even slightly can cost momentum. And once momentum is gone, the car needs help to recover it. That help often comes from energy. So if Verstappen is worried Silverstone could expose Formula One's battery problem again, that is not a small side note. It is a warning about the shape of the whole weekend. Because energy is invisible until it is missing. Fans may not immediately see it. The car still looks fast. The engine still screams. The driver still turns into the corner and fires out onto the straight. But inside the cockpit, the difference can be brutal. One moment, the car gives the driver the push he expects. The next, it feels like the car has held something back. That is where races change. Not always with a dramatic mistake. Not always with a lockup, a spin, or a crash. Sometimes the damage happens more quietly. The driver exits a corner with slightly less speed. The car reaches the next straight with slightly less energy. A rival behind gets just close enough. A rival ahead becomes just far enough away. And suddenly, Verstappen is not controlling the fight. He is reacting to it. That is the nightmare Red Bull must avoid. Because Verstappen is at his most dangerous when he is dictating the race. When he chooses where to push, where to save, where to attack, and where to make the others uncomfortable. But if the car's energy behavior forces him to think defensively, even for a few laps, the whole race can tilt away from him. And this connects directly to the upgrades. A new upgrade package can make the car stronger through the corners. It can give more stability. It can reduce drag. It can improve how the car uses the tires. But it cannot simply ignore the relationship between corner speed and energy demand. If Verstappen has to correct the car through high-speed sections, that correction costs time. If the car costs him time, he needs more recovery elsewhere. If the energy system does not give him that recovery in the right place, the lap becomes unbalanced. And if the lap becomes unbalanced at Silverstone, the entire upgrade story becomes complicated. Because then Red Bull may have improved the car, but not solved the problem that decides the result. That is the part people often miss. Formula One upgrades are not judged by how clever they look. They are judged by whether they let the driver do more. Can he brake later? Can he turn in with more confidence? Can he protect the tires? Can he attack when the window opens? Can he defend when the pressure comes? Can he repeat the lap without feeling the car slowly leaving him? That last question may be the most important, because Silverstone does not punish weakness once. It punishes it again and again. A small problem with confidence through the fast corners can drain the tires. A small problem with energy can make defending harder. A small problem with balance can force setup compromises. And when those problems start feeding into each other, Red Bull stops fighting one issue. They start fighting a chain. This is why Verstappen's simulator reaction matters more than it first appears. The source information says he started laughing while driving Silverstone on Red Bull's Formula One simulator. The full reason is not specified, but the reaction itself is difficult to ignore. A normal driver reaction might be frustration. A normal reaction might be a complaint. But laughter from Verstappen, in that context, feels different. It sounds like a driver who has found something that does not make sense. Something that feels awkward before the real weekend even begins. Something that may look manageable in theory, but feel exposed when a lap is driven at racing intensity. And that is why the simulator is such a powerful clue. The simulator is not the race. It is not perfect. It cannot copy every gust of wind, every bump, every tire response, every tiny change in track grip, but it can reveal patterns. It can show whether a setup direction feels promising. It can show whether a car gives a driver confidence. It can show whether a problem might appear before the team has to face it in public. So if Verstappen felt something strange enough to laugh, Red Bull would not treat that as background noise. They would treat it as data with emotion attached. And in Formula One, emotional data from a champion driver is valuable because some problems do not show their full danger in a spreadsheet. A graph may show a loss here, a gain there, a predicted improvement somewhere else. But the driver feels the whole car at once. He feels whether the front and rear are connected. He feels whether the power arrives naturally. He feels whether the lap is rhythm or whether every corner is a negotiation. And if Silverstone breaks that rhythm, Verstappen will know immediately. That is where the rumor, the warning, and the conflict all come together. Red Bull is not arriving empty-handed. They are arriving with more upgrades. But Verstappen is not arriving with blind confidence. He is arriving with a question. Will these upgrades create a car he can attack with, or will they simply create a faster version of the same uncertainty? That question is dangerous because of what it does inside a team. Engineers want confirmation that the development path is working. The driver wants proof that the car will behave when it matters. The team wants momentum. The rivals want doubt. And Silverstone is built to reward whichever side is right. If the upgrades work, Red Bull can say Austria was not a false sign. They can say the car is responding. They can say the development direction is alive. But the battery problem appears again. If the car still asks too much from Verstappen, if the simulator warning becomes real on track, then the story changes completely. It becomes bigger than one package. It becomes a question of whether Red Bull is fixing symptoms instead of causes. That is the fear, because fixing symptoms can look successful for a while. A car is unstable, so the team adds grip. A car lacks confidence, so the team changes balance. A car loses time in one section, so the team chases speed somewhere else. But if the deeper problem is how the whole package works together, then every fix can create a new compromise. More front end might hurt the rear. More stability might add drag. More speed might increase tire stress. More aggression with energy might leave the car exposed later in the lap. And slowly, the team is not building freedom. It is building trade-offs. That is why Silverstone is the perfect place for the truth to come out.